Part 23. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 221. Chapter 221 Entering the Paradise on Earth by Mistake. The originally desolate valley is now covered with luxuriant grass and wildflowers. In the middle, a patch of gravel has been cleared, and a dozen women are dancing. With raised hands and feet, the clothes are fluttering, like a fairy falling into the mortal world, making people reluctant to take their eyes away. Some soldiers rubbed their eyes hard and even thought they were too tired from the journey and had hallucinations. Fortunately, Li Laosi and Yeshan reacted first. One took 2 steps forward to protect Ji Yi and Lu Yang, while the other quickly looked at the entire valley, the caves, and the observation shacks on both sides of the mountains. At this moment, the women also discovered that an outsider had broken in. They screamed and dispersed, throwing flutes and harps all over the floor. "Someone is coming, release the vine ladder quickly. Class leader, someone is here. Help." The valley, which just a moment ago was like a fairyland on earth, suddenly became a commotion and lost all its beauty. Everyone touched their noses and scratched the backs of their heads in embarrassment, feeling very aggrieved. They obviously did nothing. There were soldiers who were about to put down their bows, arrows, and swords, but they were stopped by Yeshan. "Alert, don't worry just because you think it's a woman, this is not a military camp." Li Laosi also said, "We have lived here for the whole winter. It is not easy to live here. Don't underestimate these women. Some of them must be good at martial arts." Sure enough, after the women climbed into various caves in a panic, a short while later, a woman who pretended to be brave jumped down from the largest cave and ran straight towards everyone. The two parties were 5 or 6 feet away. The woman stopped and looked at the people carefully. She saw that most of Li Laosi and Li Laosi were dressed as soldiers. She looked a little bad, and she obviously thought that everyone was a remnant. She clenched the sword in her hand and shouted loudly, "This place has been occupied by us. All the strong men should find another place to stay." Li Laosi took 2 steps forward and said, "We are not refugees and remnants, nor did we come here to settle down. Last winter, we lived here for several months and left some book boxes behind. Because they were inconvenient to carry, we sealed them in the one on the far left. It's in a small cave. We're going to take it away this time and won't disturb your life here." The woman's eyes flashed, and her hand holding the sword relaxed. They arrived here 3 months ago and were overjoyed to find a cave, crude tables and chairs, and even a straw hut stove. Of course, they also discovered the book box in the cave. Originally, they thought that if someone came to pick up books, they could follow them out of the mountains. But at this moment, the people who came to pick up the books were not the gentle scholars they imagined, but actually a group of soldiers. Li Laosi also saw the entrance to the small cave being opened, frowned slightly, and said, "You don't have to be afraid, we don't mean any harm. We just need to get back the books, and you can use the rest as you like. If you are worried, we can camp on the edge of the forest. As long as you send over all the 486 volumes of the book, we will not have any conflict." The woman looked at them carefully for a long time, did not agree or refuse, and turned away. Seeing this, Yeshan said, "Let's light a fire and have a rest. Dealing with women is troublesome, and it might take a long time." Li Laosi nodded and told everyone. Half of the people made a fire and roasted the rabbits and pheasants caught on the road to pad their bellies. The other half were on guard and could not relax. Everyone immediately got busy, dividing the work and cooperating without any confusion. In the largest cave in the distance, a woman stood at the entrance of the cave, looking at the busy people beside the forest. She wore an ink blue cardigan with an embroidered gauze-pleated skirt. Her black hair was tied into a simple double spiral bun, with a white jade hairpin inserted sideways, which made her eyebrows picturesque. She occasionally raised her eyebrows. In her hands, she wore a silk-filled tourmaline bracelet on her white wrist, which had a unique charm. If the surrounding caves were not too rough, some people would believe that she was a pampered lady in the backyard of a wealthy family. The sword-wielding woman who had just spoken to Li Laozi and others said in a low voice, "Leader, these people don't look like ordinary gangsters, and they also bring 2.5 young men with them." The two leaders, one looks like a steward, although he looks tough, he looks a bit like a peasant. The number of books they reported is also correct. They must really be here to pick up the books. Do you think we should give them the books? Should we go out with them? The beautiful woman shook her head slightly and ordered, "Look again, we are all women. If we trust the wrong person, there will be no room for us to turn around. You go and tell them that we have read the books on weekdays and we need to sort them out. Let's ask them to rest by the forest for 2 days. In addition, it's best to give them something to find out their background." "Okay, I'll go find Xiaotong and Hui'er. They are young and no one will be prepared," the woman holding the sword responded. Beside the forest, a bonfire was already burning. There were not many prey that the people caught on the road, but they could eat enough if they were roasted with fine salt and the white flour biscuits brought from home. As a result, as soon as the rabbits were roasted, 2 little girls came over from the cave. They were about 15 or 16 years old. They were small in stature, dressed in ordinary clothes, and looked timid, just like little rabbits. The 2 of them carried a small iron pot and a small cloth bag, stood a few steps away, and talked to everyone. "Fellow warriors, our class leader said that the book box has been opened by everyone. It will take a day or 2 to put it together. Please wait. There are iron pots and japonica rice here. You warriors have come a long way to work hard. If you don't mind, we will help you. Let's make some rice porridge to warm up your stomach." No one can be wary when faced with such a little girl. Yashan and Li Laozi cupped their hands and responded, "Okay, please tell your class leader that no book should be missing. In addition, we will keep the iron pot as a loan, but you can take the japonica rice back." Perhaps they spoke too loudly, and the 2 little girls shrank their necks in fright. Their big eyes were immediately filled with tears, as if they might fall at any time. Yashan and Li Laozi were both embarrassed and subconsciously took a few steps back. The 2 little girls were holding onto their clothes, tears falling more and more urgently. "Our class leader has ordered that if you take the japonica rice back, you will be scolded." Some soldiers felt soft-hearted and said, "Fourth master, they are just 2 little girls. Can you treat them to a rabbit leg?" "Yes, fourth master, let's make some porridge to drink. We have been eating solid food along the way, and I really can't eat any more." Li Laozi frowned. He wanted to take everyone's thoughts into consideration, so he nodded. Immediately someone led the 2 little girls to sit on the big stone and stuffed them with roasted rabbit legs. The little girls were a little cautious at first, but once the rabbit meat was in their mouths, they forgot everything. "Woo, it's so delicious. We haven't eaten meat for a year. We've been hungry all day, woo." "Me too, I thought I was going to starve to death in this forest." The soldiers became even more soft-hearted after hearing this. They broke dry biscuits for them and advised them, "Eat slowly. Why are you so young in this deep mountain and old forest?" End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 222. Chapter 222, I was sold, help me count the money. We were sold by our family since we were young and followed our class leader to perform songs and dances everywhere. "Hello, our class master, there are barbarians outside, please take us to hide here." The 2 little girls were probably young and timid, and they didn't quite understand what they were saying, which made everyone feel a little pity for them. Even Jia Yi and Lu Yang shared some of the pickles brought from home. Yashan and Li Laosi had a brief discussion and took advantage of the time to fetch water to explore the surrounding areas. There was indeed no trace of outsiders' activities, and they were less wary of these women. The two little girls had enough to eat and drink. They thanked each other with blushing faces, and then ran back holding hands. Everyone who looked at them laughed. Ji Yi sat next to his uncle and said carelessly, "Uncle, these people are so pitiful." Lu Yang also responded, "Yes, I don't know how they survived the barbarian pursuit." Li Laosi swallowed a mouthful of dry biscuits, glanced at them helplessly, and asked, "They are pitiful. Why are they pitiful? They were sold since they were young and have not enough to eat. They are pitiful? Such people, Tianwu does not have 100,000, but 8 all right." Ji Yi and Lu Yang frowned, both a little unhappy, feeling that their uncle was unsympathetic. The rest of the soldiers also lowered their heads and pretended to be busy. It was obvious that they did not agree with Li Laosi's words. They all came from a very low background. After all, their families were wealthy and could not allow them to risk their lives in the military camp. Hence, I feel a little more sympathetic to the little girl who also suffered the same misery. Li Laosi didn't care about this. He hit the two boys with a branch and asked, "You were talking to the two little girls just now. Did you tell them that our family also fled from the north to the south of the Yangtze River? We live in Broken Gold Beach. There is a hot spring valley and we make a lot of money every day. We have melon fields and were named by the emperor. The supply exceeds demand. Even how many people are in our family?" Ji Yi and Lu Yang were stunned when they heard this, feeling guilty for no reason. "We are just gossiping, is there nothing we can't talk about?" "Humph," Li Laosi sneered, "yeah, there's nothing I can't say. But you have said so much, what about the two little girls? Where did they say they came from? What do they do? Why do a group of women end up living in a desert? How many people are there in the mountains and forests? Where are they going?" Ji Yi and Lu Yang were speechless and finally understood. They have just been exposed to all the details, and they don't even know their identity. Li Laosi hit them on the head and cursed, "Idiot, one day, you will be sold by others and you will have to help others count their money." Ji Yi and Lu Yang lowered their heads, their faces flushed. The soldiers who were listening on the side did not dare to raise their heads, and they had not stopped talking just now. Although there is nothing serious, they are guarding the dock and are under the command of Xinting Hao. They are telling others. Ji Yi and Lu Yang were afraid of causing serious trouble, so they pulled Li Laosi's sleeves and asked, "Uncle, what should we do? If someone knows our details, will there be any danger?" "No," Li Laosi swatted them away, but did not scare them again. He said matter-of-factly, "They, a group of women, must be even more afraid of being on guard against us. Even if they know this, it won't be too detrimental to us. But you should be careful in the future and don't become unprepared when you see others pitiful." "Yes, uncle, we know we were wrong and we will never do it again in the future." Ji Yi and Lu Yang finally became honest, and the slightest restlessness in the hearts of the soldiers was suppressed. This night, the camp was extremely quiet. They took turns keeping watch and sleeping in an orderly manner. In the cave in the distance, there were more than 20 women gathered, all of them young and beautiful. Occasionally, there are two who appear to be over 30 years old, with graceful figures and unique charm. They gathered around the most beautiful woman, who was also their leader, and whispered, "Master, this group of people looks okay, at least they are polite. Do we want to follow them out of the mountain?" The beautiful heroine nodded and responded, "We have been waiting for 3 months, just for this opportunity, and we have to try it no matter what. Moreover, these people are under the command of Xinting Hao. Xinting Hao was in Kyoto before, and he was also Xinting Bo. He is not famous, but he is a real royal relative, and now he is guarding Jiangnan Pier. If we can get acquainted with him and win his favor, we will not have to worry about settling in Jiangnan. The women were all happy, and the two little girls who had gone to find out the news were also chirping and laughing, and one of them said, "Leader, the broken gold beach, with its hot springs and village, seems to be very wealthy and close to the new capital. I heard that they are all the properties of Marquis Inting. If the leader can win the admiration of Marquis Inting, let Marquis Inting take over this place. Give us a place to stay, okay?" The other one also echoed, "Yes, I heard that this village grows cold melons, which is the name given by the emperor, and the hot spring valley is also making gold every day. Those two silly boys have said it, and it sounds very good. If you occupy it, you won't have to wander around anymore." The women were excited after hearing this and asked, "Is Broken Gold Beach big? Is there a lot of fields? What kind of person is Zinting Hao, is he fierce? Oh, the class leader is so beautiful, any hero would bow down. Yes, the class leader will let me take charge of the hot spring valley when the time comes, okay. I have to go to the hot springs every day. It has been too hard these past few months." The beautiful woman frowned, waved her hand to signal everyone to shut up, and finally gave instructions in a low voice. "Let's follow these people out to the land south of the Yangtze River, and then we will slowly make plans for the rest. Previously, I only heard that Zintingbo was a cold man, did not like to talk, and had no wives or concubines. I just didn't see anyone, so I don't know what the details are. Oh, don't worry about your temperament. You and I are from the military. They must have been together for a long time. When you see the class leader, you will immediately fall under your skirt. If the class leader doesn't mind, I can first find out the truth for the class leader." A charming woman curled her hair, and while she was talking and laughing, her white neck and chest trembled slightly. She was so full of seductive charm that all her companions blushed. The beautiful woman glanced at her, but did not refute. She just said, "On the way, you can find out more information. The more we know, the more advantageous it will be for us." "I know, class leader, just take a look at it." The woman smiled proudly, "Men all have the same virtue." Early on the next morning, Li Laosi and others got up. They still did not touch the japonica rice brought by the women, but only boiled hot water to warm their bellies. Li Laosi and Yeshan discussed that they must get the book today, and then go to the outside of the mountain to explore the movements of the barbarians. They could not delay any more, as the family was still worried about it. At this time, 4 or 5 women came out of the cave, carrying several packages. The woman in front was so beautiful that everyone was stunned, but after Li Laosi's beating last night, everyone behaved very calmly, and even a little more wary. There was a flash of surprise in the woman's eyes, but she saluted uprightly and gracefully, without any hint of frivolity. "Fellow heroes, I'm sorry to trouble you for waiting so long." "Girl, you're welcome." Li Laosi and others returned the courtesy and invited them to sit on the big rock. The woman was the first to speak with a smile. "Dear warriors, the young woman's real name is Huaruyu. She and some sisters formed a singing and dancing troupe to travel around and settle down. The move of the capital was too sudden. We were in the north at the time, so we had to be late. I was chased by barbarians all the way to this area. I had no choice but to enter the mountains. Fortunately, I found this valley to stay. Speaking of which, I would also like to thank you all for leaving a lot of things and helping us a lot." As she spoke, she led several women to stand up and salute solemnly. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 223. Chapter 223. If you want to survive, you must obey the rules. She was already beautiful and so polite and courteous, which made everyone have a favorable impression of her. Even Li Laoxi's expression softened a bit. "Master Hua, you're welcome. We were also in this situation in the first place. It's fate. We came here just to pick up the books. We'll leave as soon as we get the books. We won't disturb you. Peace to all of you." Huaruyu pointed to the packages. "There are more than 100 books here, and the rest are still being sorted, and they will all be delivered. However, we have a heartfelt request. Can you please take us out of the mountains? Return to Jiangnan." She said it directly without any twists and turns. "We are a group of women, 26 people old and young. We have reached the limit of our struggle to get here. If you strong men are not willing to help, we have run out of food and we don't know how to hunt. I am afraid that I will only end up starving here. Please lend a helping hand, we will be grateful, and it will be rewarded in the future." After saying that, she and several women knelt down again, which made Li Laoxi and others at a loss. They wanted to help but couldn't do anything. They could only say, "Master Hua, get up quickly. Everything will be easy to talk about." Huaruyu didn't get a definite answer, so she looked at everyone with red eyes and tearful eyes. She was 30% pitiful and 70% stubborn and helpless. Everyone felt sour and couldn't help feeling pity. The soldiers could not bear it anymore and said one after another, "We are guarding the pier to assist and rescue the people of Tianwu. We encountered them here today, so of course we cannot ignore them. Yes, Mr. Hua, please get up quickly. Since we have seen you, we will definitely save you." Li Laoxi and Yeshan looked at each other and did not refuse. As a man, he couldn't just leave these weak women in the woods. Huaruyu noticed their expressions and breathed a sigh of relief before getting up. After chatting a few more words, she excused herself to pack her things and went back. There should be nothing major happening here for the time being, so Yeshan took 10 soldiers and Ji Luyang to lead the way and went to the other side of the mountain to explore the enemy's situation. Li Laoxi took the remaining soldiers to chop down trees to make sledges and twist ropes to prepare the women's luggage. As expected, the women took their luggage down one after another and piled it in the hay shed. Finally, with the addition of more than 400 books, 7 or 8 sledges were filled. The women smiled shyly and thanked them. Li Laoxi didn't think anything of it, but the soldiers blushed and turned around more and more busily. 3 days later, Yeshan and others came back. They were lucky enough to capture a barbarian and managed to find out the strength of the nearby barbarians. No one can stay any longer. If the barbarians find out and chase them, they will not be able to escape. When it was time to set off, Li Laoxi looked at the group of chattering women and couldn't bear it anymore, so he asked Huaruyu to speak. "Master Hua, we promise to take you on the road, and we will do our best, but you must also obey the instructions along the way, because there are many dangers in the mountains and forests. There are still several miles between going down the mountain and the dock. If you encounter a barbarian, you will be in danger. Life is in danger. If anyone disobeys the arrangements and causes trouble for everyone, then don't blame the ruthless sword in my hand." Huaruyu's pupils narrowed and she quickly said, "Okay, Fourth Master Li, just give me your orders. We will all follow the arrangements and we won't be a drag on everyone." Li Laoxi was not polite and pointed at the skirt on her body. "You all changed your skirts into long trousers, and put on shoes that are convenient for walking. The trousers and sleeves are tucked in, otherwise mosquitoes will easily get in. Wash off the perfume and the like on your body, which will easily attract wild bees. When you are on the road, try not to make any noise, especially screams. If you startle a big beast, you will be in big trouble. Put away all small pleasures such as picking flowers. You are not allowed to deviate from the group. Otherwise, you will be bitten by a poisonous snake and there will be no doctor in the group to treat you. Maintain your physical strength as much as possible and use all your strength in walking. We must rush to the riverside dock as soon as possible. Haruya frowned but nodded, but the women behind her were dissatisfied. When we came in, we also climbed over the mountains. We were still wearing skirts and we didn't delay on our way, right? That's right, I always wear perfume, so where are the wild bees? Li Laosi didn't care about this at all, and simply said, we will set off in 2/4 of an hour. If you don't want to leave, you can stay. If you are willing to follow, you must obey the rules. As he said that, he turned to check the sledge. More than 400 books were placed on a sledge. He and Ji took turns dragging them, otherwise they would not be at ease. No matter how unhappy the women are, they don't want to stay. 2/4 of an hour later, they all packed up and set off. The team on the road was quiet, no one dared to speak, but it soon stopped. The mountain road was difficult to travel, and we had to take a shortcut. There were vines and dead branches under our feet. Some of the women twisted their feet, or scratched their cheeks, and cried endlessly. At first, the soldiers showed some pity and put the injured woman on the sledge, but the women were too lazy to be afraid of the hardship and would sit on it even if their arms were scratched. By the end of the day, almost half of the women had barely walked a few steps, and the remaining half were very ill. The soldiers were half exhausted from dragging the sledges. They also had to set up camp and collect firewood for the fire. They were a little impatient. There was a woman who coquettishly shouted for hot water to soak her feet and wash her face, treating the soldiers as slaves. Li Laosi saw it and didn't say a word, and Yeshan even pretended not to see it. They have warned them before, but the soldiers still can't control themselves. In the past few days, they have not only been teased by the women, but they have also often interceded on their behalf. Now let them thoroughly understand what beauty and kindness are, so that they can remember it long. Li Laosi didn't know what a song and dance troupe was, nor had he seen a song and dance, but thinking about it, he knew that these women lived by pleasing wealthy people, and they must have been pampered and courted by men on weekdays. Although it is pitiful that we are in trouble now, we cannot change some of our habits. He does not despise their origins, but he does not want to get close to them or be driven by them. I arrived on the 8th or 9th day and returned home for more than half a month. It was already half a month later when everyone finally walked out of the forest and vaguely saw the river. The group of women have long lost their squeamish looks. They all have their heads wrapped, carrying packages on their backs, and their trousers tied around their legs. They are no different from women in the mountains and wild villages. On the 3rd day on the road, they completely exhausted the patience and compassion of the soldiers, and then they were left to collect firewood, boil water, and make porridge and other chores. As long as they are not seriously injured, they have to walk on their own feet without any preferential treatment. The women no longer joked and chatted with the soldiers, and became a little more fearful, with vague anger and resentment hidden. Yashin took 2 soldiers and returned to the dock to report the news and look for someone to respond. Haruya thought for a while, then changed into a dress, dressed up and put her hair up. Although her eyebrows were still tired, she looked even more pitiful because of her beauty. Li Laosi saw her, guessed what she was thinking, and ignored her. He was very anxious. It had been almost a month since he came out, and his family didn't know how to care about him. Had he known that these women were so troublesome, he would have left after asking for a collection of books, and he would not have taken them with him. It's okay to wait until you return to Jiangnan and tell the Marquis to send someone to rescue him. But there is no regret medicine in the world. The people slowly went down the mountain and hid in the woods, waiting for help. At dusk, a large group of people finally came running over. When they saw their own people, the soldiers were all happy to welcome them out. The women couldn't bear it anymore and crowded to the front one after another. Haruyu is clustered in the middle, looking up at the mountain road. The cavalry team of several hundred people, with the sound of hoofbeats and dust, was very loud. The first person stood tall and tall, riding a tall black horse, wearing silver armor, holding a long knife in his hand, and rushed over majestically. The fiery red sunset glow in the sky coated his silver armor with a magnificent color, as if he was from a myth. The horse came closer, and the general immediately raised his hand and opened his visor. Huaruyu's heart suddenly started beating wildly. Hinting how, this must be Zinting how. 3 more, the Labor Day is in the flower of labor, great. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, delayed flowering. Chapter 224. Chapter 224, Nosy. The man did not come down immediately, nor did he say anything idle. With just a few gestures, soldiers quickly brought everyone's luggage with them. All the women, even Li Laosi and others, were helped onto horses and rode together with the soldiers. Huaruyu approached Zintinghao intentionally or unintentionally, and wanted to join him, but was picked up by a cavalryman and thrown behind him. The people came with great momentum, and walked even more neatly, without any sloppiness. It took less than a cup of tea before and after, and the foot of the mountain was empty. Huaruyu sat behind the soldier. She didn't want to hug the soldier in front of her tightly, but there was no saddle where she Saturday. If she didn't hug him tightly, she would fall off, which made her frown and grit her teeth secretly. It's only 5 or 6 miles away, so I rode hard and arrived at the dock in the blink of an eye. There were 7 or 8 large boats waiting by the river. Everyone dismounted and began to board the boats. The women may have felt safe, but for a moment their legs felt weak and they didn't want to move. Huaruyu lost her hairpin and one of her shoes while jolting on the horse just now. Now her hair is disheveled and she is in a mess. They wanted to sit down and rest, but the soldiers shouted, "Get on the boat quickly, do you want to die? Why bother to rescue you? Don't you know that the barbarian army has already advanced? Leave quickly." The women were frightened and stood up one after another, but they couldn't help but complain. "Why are you so fierce? I am already very tired, and I can die if you just help me." "That's right, my legs are weak, please carry me quickly." This is coquettish, that is irritating. More than 20 women together are really more troublesome than a flock of ducks. The 20 soldiers who had followed them into the mountain were now hiding far away, eager to avoid getting involved with these troublesome women. The group of soldiers responsible for taking care of the women were so angry that they whipped their whips without being polite at all. "Hurry up and get on the boat. If you dare to say one more word, I will throw you off. If you fall into the hands of the barbarians, you will regret it." Huaruyu looked around, and when she saw that Marquis Zinting had disappeared, she became a little anxious and urged everyone, "Get on the boat and wait until we get to the south of the Yangtze River." The women got on the boat and then collapsed directly on the deck, refusing to move any more. On the boat next door, Mr. Ye was talking to Li Laosi. "You have been delayed for too long this time. My aunt is worried about it, so she and her second brother came to greet you. They just arrived at noon, and they brought Funiu with them." Li Laosi felt guilty after hearing this and was worried about being scolded, so he quickly said, "I didn't expect that this trip would be delayed for so long. The Marquis must intercede for me, otherwise my mother will definitely not let me come out in the future." Mr. Ye laughed when he heard this. "I can't help. If my aunt starts nagging me, I will be defeated. You can think of a way on your own." Ji Yi and Lu Yang were very tired at first, but now they felt happy. Sometimes they went into the cabin to take a look, and sometimes they went to pet Mr. Ye's horse. Huaruyu, who was on the next boat, finally discovered them. Seeing Li Laosi and Mr. Ye chatting and joking like this, she suddenly regretted it. Originally they thought that this Li Laosi was just the steward of Mr. Ho's village, but looking at his appearance, they might have guessed wrong. This is obviously very familiar and close. Had she known this, along the way, she had lowered her profile to gather more information and made more friends. Thinking of this, she blamed her sisters, none of whom were capable, for not being able to seduce Li Laozi along the way. But now it's too late to say anything. We can only go to Jiangnan and plan slowly. The boat arrived at the pier on the other side in less than 2/4 of an hour. Someone immediately came up to help lead the horse and unload the things. Ji Yin hugged the second uncle's neck, stepped on the second uncle's palm with her little feet, and tried to run up, hoping to see further. When she finally saw her father, she shouted loudly, "Dad, Daddy!" Li Laozi vaguely heard the movement, and after just one glance, he jumped onto the pier and ran over in big strides. "Mother, second brother, Fu Niu." As soon as he ran up to him, his arm was pulled by his mother. Old Mrs. Li was so angry that she took off her cloth shoes and opened them with a bang on her son's back. Originally, my son would be able to return home after leaving home for only 2 or 3 days, but as a result, he had to wait for nearly a month. In the past month, my family has been afraid to eat or sleep, and my hair has turned gray due to worry. Mrs. Kui sent people to ask 3 times. She couldn't bear it anymore, so she brought her son and granddaughter to look for him. As a result, my son actually showed his big white teeth and still had the nerve to smile. How could she not be angry? Ji Yin was relieved to see that her father was not injured at all except that he was a little thinner. He smiled and looked at Grandma waving her shoe soles and secretly slapping her hands from time to time. Li Laoer was amused. He patted his niece and asked Ji Yi and Lu Yang, who were shrinking their necks next to them, "How are you? Are you injured?" "No, no," Ji Yi and Lu Yang shook their heads quickly and took 2 steps back, fearing that they would also eat the soles of their shoes. At this time, Huaruyu and others also got off the boat. Seeing the noise from the Li family, Huaruyu pushed a woman. The woman trimmed her hair, stepped forward quickly, stopped in front of Mr. Li, and shouted at Mrs. Li anxiously, "Who are you, and why did you hit me, Brother Li? Brother Li is ours. My benefactor. If you want to hit him, hit me first." Old Mrs. Li couldn't bear to hit her son. When she heard the sound just now, it actually didn't hurt at all. It was just like knocking dust off her shoes. But just as she was about to put away the soles of her shoes, she was suddenly interrupted. She was stunned while holding up the soles of her shoes. "Who is this woman? Why are you protecting the 4th child?" Ji Yin's eyes widened even more. "What happened this month? Daddy, is he cheating on you? Is he cheating on you?" Li Laoer thought of his younger siblings at home, who had to be busy in the valley, and also missed his husband. He had become very thin during this period. Unexpectedly, his younger brother actually provoked other women outside. He also got angry and asked, "Fourth brother, what's going on? Are you doing bad things outside?" Li Laozi was even more confused. Although this woman often came to his side on the way out of the mountain, he did not say a single unnecessary word or give her an unnecessary look. At this moment, this woman suddenly came up to her and seemed to be close to her. What was going on? He subconsciously pulled the woman and threw it aside. Then he pulled the sole of my mother's shoe and swung it at himself. "Mom, keep hitting, keep hitting. I don't know this person." Seeing that her son's face was red with anxiety, Mrs. Li put on her cloth shoes and glared at her son fiercely, "You're useless, I'll take care of you after I get home." The woman was thrown to the side, and she was so painful that she burst into tears. She still wanted to speak, but she was already crying due to the good news. "Dad, you don't want me and my mother anymore, you are a bad person, a bad person." Li Laozi saw his daughter's chubby finger pointing at him, crying so hard that her tears were like broken beads. He almost went crazy with heartache, so he hugged his daughter and coaxed her away. "Daddy is wrong, Daddy is wrong. If Fu Niu doesn't cry, Daddy doesn't want you and your mother, really, Daddy is wrong." It's a pity that he refused to listen to the good news. He hugged his father's neck tightly and continued to cry at the top of his lungs. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 225. Chapter 225. Dogs look down on people. Li Laozi turned around anxiously, turned his head and saw the woman getting up. He stepped forward and kicked her. Who are you? I haven't even said a word to you. I'm willing to beat my mother to death, so there's no need for you to come here to meddle in other people's business. Get out of here. If you dare to come here to cause trouble again, I'll kick you to death. The woman was frightened, holding her belly in her hands, and ran away crawling. At this time, Mr. Ye also came close. Seeing the good news, he was crying with tears on his eyelashes, and he was not happy either. He answered the good news and coaxed, Fu Niu, why are you crying? Let your father rest today, and your uncle will take you to the city to play tomorrow, okay? Ji Yin glanced at the woman who was running away in embarrassment, and sneered in her heart, but still responded with a grieved face, okay, if you don't take my dad, he doesn't want me and my mother anymore, he likes female fairies. Mr. Ye looked at Mr. Li, who was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot, and couldn't help but laugh. Okay, let's not take him with us. Mrs. Li also glared at her son fiercely and coaxed her granddaughter, your father is just a stick, let's ignore him. Li Laozi shrank his neck and quickly explained. Mom, I really don't know her. They were rescued in the valley. I regretted it on the way. They are just a bunch of troublemakers. I have never spoken to them. Really, Ji Yi and Lu Yang can testify. Ji Yi and Lu Yang were afraid of getting into trouble, so they nodded desperately. We didn't say anything, not a word. Mrs. Li then called them to get in the car, go back and say, don't be embarrassed here. Hey, I listened to my mother. Li Laozi responded quickly moved the books to the car, and helped his mother. When he was about to hug his daughter, Ji Yin hugged Mr. Ye's neck and refused to let go. I want to ride a big horse with my uncle. Mr. Ye smiled, nodded with Li Laozi, and then got on the horse. Not far away, Huaruyu was annoyed that her plans had failed again and again, and she wanted to take the opportunity to apologize and talk to the Marquis. As a result, before she could step forward, everyone got on the carriage, got on the horse, and quickly left. She was so angry that she stared at Mr. Ye, her eyes almost on fire. Ji Yin was in Mr. Ye's arms and could see clearly, so she pulled Mr. Ye's collar and whispered, Uncle, look over there, there is a female goblin who wants to eat you. Mr. Ye was confused when he heard this. He turned around and frowned. The dress that Huaruyu had specially changed into was wrinkled like a rag, and her long hair was disheveled. There was no trace of elegance and beauty in it, but it looked like something that haunted the night. Especially now, her eyes want to shine, which makes it even more realistic. Mr. Ye lowered his head and patted the good news, don't worry, Uncle is not that delicious. After saying that, he picked up the reins of the horse, walked beside the carriage, and returned directly to the military camp. The military camp is an important place and cannot be entered casually, especially women and children. Fortunately, this year, people were brought over from Jiangbei one after another, and they always had to be temporarily resettled for a few days, so some simple thatched sheds were built on one side of the military camp. Old Mrs. Li didn't want to cause trouble to Mr. Ye, so she chose the one closest to the military camp and stayed there for a day. They wanted to go home as soon as possible. After all, everyone in the family was still thinking about it. By this time, the sky was getting dark. Yeshan lit a bonfire, illuminating the surrounding area. Mr. Ye's soldiers went to the cook camp to get food. They all sat in front of the hut, eating and talking together. The chef's craftsmanship is average, but the ingredients have been purchased by Mr. Ye long ago, so there are chicken, fish, vegetables, egg custard, and white rice steamed buns on the simple wooden table, which is very rich. Others paid it off. Li Laozi, Ji Yi, and Lu Yang spent nearly a month eating roasted rabbits and dry biscuits in the woods. Even the bamboo tubes in which the pickles were placed were rinsed with water several times. When they finally saw the food, their eyes turned green and they ate hard. Mrs. Li didn't care about blaming her sons anymore and kept serving them vegetables. Even Ji Yin divided half of her own egg custard and put it into the bowls of her father and brothers. Finally, after he was mostly full, Li Laozi had time to talk. How he met these women in the valley, how he got back the collection of books, and how difficult and troublesome the return journey was, he told them all, and every word was filled with regret. Ji Yi and Lu Yang nodded while eating, echoing from time to time, "More delicate than Fu Niu. It's so annoying that they treat us like slaves." Old Mrs. Li finally believed that her son had no affair, and she felt she could explain it to her daughter-in-law when she went back, so she stopped asking any more questions. Mr. Ye smiled and picked fish bones for the good news, and said, "Auntie, I have sent people back to Sujintan to report the news. You don't have to worry about home. I will take you around the city tomorrow and go back the day after." When old Mrs. Li was about to refuse, Mr. Ye added, "My aunt usually cares about me and takes care of my food and clothing. I finally came here and asked me to do my best." Ji Yin clapped her hands happily. Go, go, Grandma is going." Old Mrs. Li wiped the vegetable soup from her granddaughter's mouth and said angrily, "You just know how to play." Mr. Ye also smiled. Knowing that the old lady agreed, he asked about trivial matters at home. They were chatting, eating, and drinking, and not far away was where Huaruyu and others stayed. Some soldiers brought them a bucket of sorghum rice porridge and a pot of stewed cabbage for dinner. The women had washed up and changed into clean clothes. They thought they had regained their beauty and deserved to be pampered, so they stamped their feet and yelled, "What is this? We won't eat it." "That's right, this is like pig food, how do you eat it?" The soldier stared angrily, "We have 10 or 20,000 people in the camp eating this kind of food. Are you saying we are all pigs?" The women were gagged and pointed at the Li family's dining table unconvinced. "They all come from the mountains, how come they have meat to eat?" The soldier rolled his eyes with disdain on his face. "Those are members of our Marquis's family, and our Marquis paid for the food. How handsome are you, compared with others?" Having said that, he threw down the barrel, turned around and walked away. "Eat as much as you like, or you'll be hungry if you don't eat." The court didn't say who we would support with food, so our good intentions ended up being a donkey's liver and lungs. The women were left standing there, their faces ugly with anger. "Leader, look, these soldiers are so rude." "Yes, we just came from Jiangbei. How difficult it is for them to be so vicious." Huaruyu has been looking at the Li family, and the more she looks at it, the more she regrets it. Had she known that the Li family was so close to the Marquis, she should have restrained everyone in the mountains and left a good impression on Mr. Li. At least let Li Laozi introduce her to the Marquis and praise her highly. It's a pity that now everything is lost and we can only try our best to make amends. She scolded the women, "Stop arguing. What time of the day is it? You are still having a temper. Eat and rest quickly, and wait until I think of a solution." The women were still dissatisfied and did not dare to say anything. They ate hastily and then went to bed. Early on the next morning, Huaruyu was busy dressing up and changing her clothes. She dressed softly and dignifiedly before walking to the gate of the camp and talking to the gatekeepers. "Little brother, we were rescued by Mr. Marquis yesterday and were out of danger. Today we come here to express our thanks. Please help us spread the word that the little girl is Huaruyu, the leader of the Fishan song and dance troupe." After saying this, she gave the soldier a broken piece of silver. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 226. Chapter 226, That Female Goblin is Going to Eat You. The soldier refused to accept the offer, and said coldly, "Women are not allowed to enter our military camp." Haruya frowned and could only say, "Then can you please ask the little brother to go in and tell the story, and ask the Marquis to come over and meet you." The soldier shook his head and said, "No, our Marquis left early and is not in the camp." "What? The Marquis has left? When did he leave?" Haruya was anxious, but the soldiers refused to say anything. If they revealed the whereabouts of the general without authorization, they would be punished with a military stick. Haruya thought for a while and walked to the shed where the Lee family lived. Sure enough, the Lee family was also missing. She had some speculations in her mind and could only leave unhappy. In the county town, Mr. Ye took the Lee family for a stroll on the street with the good news in his arms. "One moment I buy snacks for good news, and the next I buy candy, but if I take one more look at the good news, I won't let it go." Old Mrs. Lee was very worried about money and would not let her buy it. "It's a pity that there's nothing we can do to stop it." But Mr. Yes started to arrange clothes and shoes for her again, which frightened her even more and she did not dare to speak. She was afraid that Mr. Ye would buy the entire county if she spoke again. After walking directly at noon, the Lee family's carriage was installed mostly, and it was almost impossible to squeeze into the person. Ye Gongza took everyone into a restaurant. The shopkeepers of the restaurant are all smart people. How could they not know Marquis Zinting? You must know that the county town is close to the dock, and Zintinghou is the commander-in-chief of tens of thousands of soldiers on the dock. Immediately, the largest and most luxurious box was opened, and good wine and food were served like water. I ate a lot of snacks on the way to Jiyan. Now my eyes are big and my belly is small. Everything tastes delicious, but my stomach can't hold it anymore, so I can only pout my mouth in frustration. Mr. Yes saw it funny, hugged her and slowly fed her chicken soup. This stuff doesn't occupy the stomach, but also nourishes the body. The old lady was afraid of wasting her meal, so she didn't eat less. But she obviously overthought it. With Li Laosi and 2.5 young men, how could there be any leftover food? In the end, everyone was satiated, drinking tea and gossiping. The old lady was thinking about home, so she said, "Mr. Ye, we will go back in a moment. You are busy here, and we can't help you. You are still worried about home, so you can rest assured if you go back as soon as possible." Li Laosi is also thinking about his wife, and Li Lao is even more concerned about the business in Hot Spring Valley, so he also nods. "We really can't leave her at home for too long. It's only because Mrs. Kui and Mr. Wen are helping us stay that we dare to come out. Otherwise, if there is something big or small, the villagers will have no idea." Mr. Ye did not force him to stay because he was going to Jiangbei tomorrow. The news brought back by Yeshan said that the barbarian defenses had stalled, and except for these troops near Jiangbei, there was almost no follow-up support. Although the barbarians were all warriors on horseback, the number was still too small, occupying half of Tianwu's territory, and the defense line was stretched too long, leaving loopholes. Take this opportunity to kill all the barbarians in Jiangbei. At least within 2 or 3 months, there will be no more major wars. Well, and, please be careful on the road. I will send someone to give you a ride, and I will also return to Kyoto to deliver a memorial on the way. Mrs. Lee remembered something and asked, "Mr. Ye, do you have anyone to give gifts to? I also left some cold melons and cantaloupes for you." The village chief watched them all day long and no one would let them touch them. "Otherwise, pick it up and send it to Kyoto." Mr. Ye shook his head and said with a smile, "I just want to send it, and I just want to send it to the palace." But my family has already donated it, so there is no need to bother anymore. Tell the village chief uncle to share it with the villagers. Folks have worked hard. Once you grow it, how can you not know what cold melon and cantaloupe taste like? Mrs. Lee smiled and sighed, young master is right, the people in the village are really reluctant to eat it. You know, a cold melon is worth 3 taels of silver, how much food can it buy? Is there still a shortage of food in the village? I asked Ye Shan to go. Mr. Ye was stopped by Li Laoer halfway through asking, no, Mr. Ye, there is enough food in the village to last for a year. The villagers just can't bear to part with it, no in exchange for food. Mr. Ye nodded, go back and tell the village chief that you should eat it if you should, otherwise we will sell it. Where will the seeds come from in the village? Will they not be planted next year? Li Laoer suddenly realized, oh, I really forgot about this. We must keep some good ones in the village to eat, otherwise there will be no place to get the seeds. Everyone laughed and said, this is true. Even if you don't want to eat, you will eat it? After a few more idle words, everyone settled their accounts and left. When passing by the cloth shop, Mr. Ye wrapped almost all the light cotton cloth in the shop and put them all on the carriage. When old Mrs. Lee stopped me, he said, this is for the folks in the village. Auntie will go back and give me a share. Don't worry about the money for me. I am in the military camp all day and have nowhere to spend the money. Why don't we have any place to spend money? Old Mrs. Lee scolded, save it for me to marry a wife later. You are already a grown man, you love Fu Niu so much on weekdays, it would be better to get married as soon as possible and have a few. Ji Yin also nodded her little head, her chubby little face trembling, and her big eyes full of seriousness. He even forgot to tell Mr. Ye, uncle, that female seductress is not good enough. I don't want her as my wife. Mr. Ye laughed helplessly, don't worry, I don't even know who she is, how can I marry her? As everyone was talking, they left the city. 20 of Mr. Ye's soldiers also arrived. They joined the Li family's carriage and went straight on the road. Ji Yin was lying at the window. After walking a long way, he waved his little hand to Mr. Ye. Old Mrs. Lee was helpless and funny. She held her granddaughter in her arms and persuaded her, don't worry, Mr. Ye is very powerful. He won't be confused by those women. Li Laosi was sitting on the shaft of the car. With a grimace on his face, he put his head in to plead with me, Mom, when you get home, can you not talk to Hong Ying about that woman? I really have no external intentions. I just said I haven't even said a word to that woman. Mrs. Lee raised her hand and slapped her son, annoying him for not thinking clearly. You idiot, when you get home, tell your wife exactly what happened without leaving anything behind. Your wife will definitely be angry, but if you coax her more and admit your mistakes, she will get better afterwards and won't be left with any knots in her heart. If you don't tell her and let her hear it from someone else, you will never get her to forgive you. Li Laosi shrank his neck, carefully thought about his wife's temper, and quickly nodded in agreement, my mother is still awesome, I just worry that she will be angry. Orange Mrs. Lee pushed her son's big head out, which made her heartbroken even if she took another look at it. Ji Yin was lying in a pile of cloth, smiling so hard that his teeth could not see his eyes. She can rest assured, her father is so stupid, even if the female demon wants to take a bite, she will probably lose a tooth. It is not said that the Li family was in a hurry to go home, it is only said that Mr. Ye rode a horse all the way back to the military camp. Huaruyu, who had been waiting at the door for a long time, was so happy that she quickly straightened her hair and clothes before stepping forward. As a result, the gate of the camp was opened, and Mr. Ye just hit the horse and went in. Huaruyu didn't have time to say a word, but instead ate a mouthful of ashes. Her face turned dark with anger, and early the next morning, she ran to block people again. But when she caught up with the army and went out to fight, the idle people retreated. As soon as she got close, she was chased 10 feet away by the fierce soldiers. After the army left, she finally bribed a small soldier, but when she heard that the Marquis was going on an expedition and would come back in at least half a month, she was completely discouraged. A group of women stayed in the shack for several nights, but they couldn't bear it anymore and came up with ideas one after another. "Master, let's go to Kyoto." "Yes, it turns out that the nobles from Kyoto have all moved here. The young master from the Chamberlain's palace who admired you before, and the second young master from the Earl's palace should all be here. As long as they meet you, they will definitely help us rebuild the song and dance troupe." Haruyu was silent for a long time, but shook her head. "No, we don't want to go to Kyoto. There is another place we can try." Everyone was confused. "Master, where are you talking about?" Haruyu had a complicated look on her face and looked to the southwest. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 227. Chapter 227 Lucky Jiren. After being away from home for a month, Li Laosi and the two boys were eager to return home. The carriage took a main road, which was safe and flat, so they only rested for 2 hours at night. The rest of the time, they were on their way. Jiyan slept when he was sleepy and ate when he was hungry. He didn't feel too tired at all. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the carriage turned onto the path of Broken Gold Beach. Previously, the family received a message from Mr. Ye and knew that Li Laosi and the children were safe, but everyone still couldn't help but worry about them. Tao Hongying figured that the time was almost up, so she simply divided the errands of the kitchen and squatted at the mouth of the valley. Finally seeing the shadow of the carriage, she ran over immediately. Li Laosi jumped down from the carriage and went up to him with a silly smile. "Well, Hongying, I'm back." Tao Hongying was so angry that she wanted to pinch him, but when she saw her mother-in-law getting out of the car with her daughter in her arms, she could only give him a fierce look and said, "I'll settle the score with you later in the evening." After saying that, she went to hug her daughter and supported her mother-in-law. "Mom, Funiu misses you, Funiu brought you delicious food." Jiyan hugged her mother, kissing her left and right, and she was so happy that she made Tao Hongying blame her daughter. "You are just a urinal with a gold rim, and you have a good mouth. You say you miss me every day, but you can't bear to leave me. When it's time to go out to play, it will never fall behind." He, Jiyan felt guilty, hugged her mother's neck, smiled and showed her small white teeth, pretending to be stupid to the end, making everyone laugh. The old lady asked, "How are you at home? Is everything okay?" "No, Mom, everything is fine, except that everyone is thinking about you," Tao Hongying responded, and at this moment Ji Yi and Lu Yang had already run into the valley. After being away for a month, the two boys were also homesick. Sister-in-law Lu had red circles in her eyes when she pulled her son, but she didn't blame her at all. She was married to a bodyguard and earned a living from traveling around the world. She was used to being separated and returning safely, and she was a little more resilient and patient than others. Lu Biatu did the same. He patted his son and apprentice on the shoulders. When they heard that they were not injured, he went to greet Li Laosi. The villagers also surrounded the carriage at this time. Mrs. Li didn't say much, pointed to the more than 20 pieces of fine cloth in the carriage, and said with a smile, "Master Ho went on an expedition again. Before leaving, he was thinking about the village and bought so many. Let's bring back the fabric. It's said to be a summer shirt for the elderly and children in the village. I advised him to keep the money and marry his wife in the future, but the Marquis refused." Everyone laughed and said, "When the Marquis marries a wife from now on, let's help pay a share of the money." The village chief happened to come over. When he heard this, he laughed and cursed, "You guys think you have made a lot of money by selling cold melons, so you have started to learn to brag." The villagers are all laughing. They have indeed become a little swollen recently. During this period, the cold melons and cantaloupes in the melon fields were taken away by carts and picked one by one and sent to the valley. Although they couldn't calculate how much money they earned, they still remembered clearly that a cold melon cost 3 taels of silver. Even if each of their families doesn't get much, they still have 10 cold melons, which is 30 taels. Silver means confidence, so now everyone walks with the wind at their feet, heads held high and chest held high. The village chief had no choice but to chase people away. The fourth son and the 2 boys are back safely. Don't worry about it, everyone. Just do whatever you need to do. Tonight, wait for the second gentleman to calculate the general account and pay everyone again. Great, money is going to be distributed again. The villagers were all happy and cheered loudly. The village chief glared at them. Shut your mouths, don't act around and make others jealous. The meat will rot in your own pot, do you understand? Understood, everyone laughed, and then went about their business. The village chief called to the Lee family, go back quickly. Mr. Wen came last night and has been waiting. Mrs. Kui hasn't gone back either. She is thinking about you. The 20 soldiers took this opportunity to come up and say goodbye to everyone, planning to rush to the capital. Naturally, the crowd couldn't let them go like this, so they took them to sit under the shade of a tree, had a simple bite of rice to fill their stomachs, and opened a big cold melon. The green skin, the bright red flesh, and the sweet taste made all the soldiers full of praise and excitement. This is a cold melon. I heard it was a good thing bestowed by the emperor. Even the nobles in Kyoto may not be able to eat it, but they can actually hold it in their hands and gnaw it. The village chief greeted them with a smile, be sure not to swallow the melon seeds, spit them out and save the seeds. This year, this thing is too valuable, just try it fresh. Next year, the village will plant cold melons on all the riverbanks, and I will take you there then. Eat whatever you want in the fields. Okay, village chief, let's remember it next year. I want to eat one myself, hold it and chew it. A soldier who was not too old shouted with a smile, making everyone laugh. The village chief waved his hand and made a generous promise, next year, I will find a time to free up the hot spring for a day, so that you can soak in the hot spring and eat cold melons while holding it. Everyone laughed even more happily when they thought about that scene. 20 people share a cold melon, which is just one piece for each person. After they had spit out a bowl of seeds, everyone got up and continued on their way. The Lee family also returned to the village. Mrs. Kui and Mr. Wen were sitting under the shade of a tree in front of the Lee family to enjoy the cool weather. When they saw the carriage, they both stood up. Li Laosi jumped off the carriage, strode forward and saluted, and said, Mr. Wen, all the books are intact and I have brought them back. This is great. Mr. Wen patted Li Laosi on the shoulder and said with a smile, have you endured hardship? Are you injured? No, I encountered a little trouble, but it was solved. Li Laosi responded casually and began to move down the collection of books. Soon, all the books and things Mr. Ye bought were moved into the house. Ji Yin hugged Mrs. Kui's neck and showed her her new goodies, which made Mrs. Kui laugh non-stop. Mr. Wen turned around and saw it, feeling mixed in his heart and a bit eager in his eyes. Mrs. Li was worried about her grandson and asked, Sir, there are really a lot of these books. How long will Jiren have to copy them by himself? Do I need help from someone? Mr. Wen smiled and said, I went to the Guo family again a few days ago. Mr. Guo heard that the fourth child and his friends had not come out after a month in the mountains, and he was very concerned about it. I took the opportunity to mention it, and he agreed. I will send these books to the academy. Mr. Tongpeng said that I would ask more than 30 students from Jiren's class to copy them. These manuscripts will also be kept in the academy for a year for the students of those academies to read, which is a way of giving back to the students. Our hard work. Everyone in the Li family didn't react for a moment, they just felt that it was a bit troublesome. but Jiyan understood that Mr. Wen was trying to build momentum for Jiren. These days, a collection of books is more precious than gold. What's more, the Guo family used to run an academy, so books that the Guo family could take with them when they fled for their lives were extremely rare and precious. Even if Jiren and his classmates help with copying, it is equivalent to reading it in full, and they will definitely benefit a lot. These manuscripts, if left in the academy for a year, even if they can only be read but not copied, will open the students' horizons and increase their reading capacity. If you meet a smart student who can memorize it after reading it a few times, you might even be able to leave dozens of copies for the academy. The most important thing is that 1 year later, when these books are returned to the Li family, Jiren will become the favorite of the academy. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 228. Chapter 228. The poor suddenly become rich. Anyone who still wants to see these books can only borrow them from Jiren. It cannot be said that Jiren will be allowed to walk sideways in the academy from now on, but at least no one dares to bully him, and everyone who sees Jiren must be polite. Looking further into the future, the students in the academy have different statuses and backgrounds. Whether it is for scientific examinations or to make a living, as long as they benefit from these manuscripts, they will remember the Li family and become Jiren. Connections. I have to say that Jiren is lucky. After he entered the academy, his family opened a small shop to take care of his life. Now Mr. Wen is so troubled to pave the way for his future study and scientific examination. Mr. Wen was afraid that the Li family would be reluctant to part with it, so he broke it apart and rubbed it apart, and explained the principles and benefits in detail. Only then did everyone understand that Li Laoer stood up and gave a big gift to Mr. Wen, thanking him for taking such trouble for his son. Mr. Wen smiled and helped him. As a family, there is no need to be so polite. It is the fourth child who is willing to take the risk to retrieve these books. Otherwise, no matter how much I plan, it will be impossible for a clever woman to make a meal without straw. Having said that, he added, I only have a rest today, and I have business tomorrow. I will rush to Luoan with my collection of books, and try to arrange things tonight so that everyone can feel at ease. Okay, thank you for your hard work, Mr. Wen. Come back another day and let Hong Ying cook some good dishes so that our family can have a good meal, Mrs. Li said gratefully. Subsequently, he sent Li Laosi to the field to pick a basket of melons as a souvenir for Mr. Wen. It's hard to let Mr. Wen visit the academy empty-handed. Soon, Mr. Wen counted the books clearly, then carefully poured them into his carriage, carried a basket of cantaloupes, and rushed to Luoan with Wen Hai. When they reached the intersection of the valley, Li Laoer was worried and asked Lu Biatu to take Ji Yi and Lu Yang to follow him. Ji Yi and Lu Yang didn't feel tired at all. They were even more excited when they heard they were going to the academy. Jian and Jia anxiously walked around, looking at their second uncle aggrievedly. Second uncle, we haven't been to the academy yet. We also miss our eldest brother. How could Li Laoer be willing to let his nephews be like this? He only stayed for 1 night and came back, so he said, Go, you two, don't be naughty and cause trouble. Come back early tomorrow. Haha, my second uncle is so good. We promise to be obedient. The 2 naughty boys quickly jumped into the car and urged them to leave quickly, fearing that the second uncle would regret it or that grandma would find out and stop him. Mrs. Li didn't have time to pay attention to them at the moment. She had been away from home for several days. She was worried about it, so she carried her granddaughter around the front yard and backyard, and walked to the river beach again. This month, the sales of cold melons and cantaloupes are almost gone. Looking at the riverbank from a distance, it is completely empty, which makes it easy to distinguish. The village chief walked up and down the field with his hands behind his back, holding his pipe and pot. He guarded this cornucopia in the village day and night, and he felt uneasy even if he left it for a moment. The harsh sun turned his face into a bronze color, but the corners of his raised lips never fell down. In order to prevent outsiders from making trouble and grabbing melons, all the people in the village that could be mobilized were mobilized to watch for a month. In the past few days, the cold melons and cantaloupes have been almost sold out, so half of the staff have been withdrawn. Seeing Mrs. Lee and Ji Yin coming over, the village chief smiled and announced the good news to them: "Look at our cornucopia, it has done a great service to the village. When I planted it in spring, I knew it was a good thing, but I didn't expect it to be so valuable." Mrs. Lee put down the good news and said with a smile, "Isn't it true? Everyone can wake up laughing in their sleep. 1 acre of melon land can bring in hundreds of acres of fertile land." The village chief picked a cantaloupe at random, washed it in a bucket next to the shack, and then handed it to Ji Yin. Mrs. Lee thought of the basket of cantaloupe just now and said, "The basket of cantaloupe just now was given to Mr. Gr Academy. It is considered a purchase by our family and I have asked my second brother to keep the account." The village chief waved his hand. "Even if you know what you are doing, let's talk about it. Everyone would still benefit from your family. Without your family saving young master Ye, they would not have worked so hard to find melon vines for us. 1 yard is 1 yard now. Everyone is worried about the income from the melon fields. It's not good to spoil the friendship just because of this little money." Original Mrs. Lee refused to take advantage, so the village chief just did it. Ji Yin's little teeth were not strong enough, so he chewed for a long time before biting off a bit of the melon skin, and stamped his feet anxiously. The old lady quickly helped to hammer open the cantaloupe, carefully leaving the pulp, and handed the flesh to Ji Yin. Ji Yin was held in her hands and slowly nibbled on it like a little mouse. The sweet taste made her squint her big eyes. She looked so cute no matter how she looked at it. The village chief couldn't help but touch her braid, and said with a smile, "These children are enjoying a lot of blessings. In a while, the village is planning to build a school. If there is not enough manpower in the valley, we have to hire people, but it is not good to just earn work points. It delays children's ability to study. Yes, this is a big deal. We old guys can only do so much. What will happen to the village in the future will still depend on the children. The old lady is very supportive of studying, otherwise she would not have gritted her teeth and sent her grandson to the academy. You must know that a monthly salary of 10 taels is a heavy burden for any family." Ji Yin listened to the conversation between grandma and the village chief, and made a small calculation in his mind. The melon fields are mostly empty, and I'm afraid that by the end of the month, they will all be picked and the garden will be completely abandoned. But she also planted 2 acres in her space, and she could always pick hundreds of cold melons and more than 1,000 cantaloupes. When the time comes, look for an opportunity and let Dongmei and Yeshan send it out, saying that Mr. Ye planted it privately. In this way, a large amount of money will be received. Moreover, the money does not need to be divided among the villages, nor does the family know about it. It belongs to her alone. The more I thought about the good news, the happier I became. I couldn't help but burst into laughter, which made Mrs. Lee and the village chief look over. This child is so happy that he can even giggle out loud. Ji Yin blushed and ran to sit next to her grandma's lap. The old lady hugged her and put her on her lap. She kissed her several times and said, "Our Fu Niu is our little lucky star. From now on, we will have good food, and we will have no worries about food and clothing." At this time, Li Lauer also came over and discussed with the village chief how to divide the food and wages in the evening. There was no shortage of grain harvested this month, enough to feed everyone for a year. However, there was almost no grain grown in the riverbank land in the village. Everyone was unsure and decided to keep using grain as their ticket. Save up the food when you have more. Only when you have food in your hands will you feel confident. As for wages, they are still divided as last time. The money from selling cold melons and cantaloupes is kept in the bank and divided together at the end of the year. Although people in the village have come together to share the joys and sorrows, they still have to be on guard against the poor getting rich suddenly, and having money to develop evil ideas. It will be more prudent to wait and see for a few more months. Hearing the good news nearby, he yawned and soon fell asleep. When he woke up, it was already night. Li Laozi was cautiously talking to his wife about the women he met in the mountains, when Tao Hongying pinched him secretly so many times. It's a pity that Ji Yi is not around, and there is no one to testify for Li Laozi. Li Laozi is really suffering, and he rubs the tender meat on his waist from time to time. Ji Yin held the porridge bowl, kicked her little feet, and secretly watched the excitement. She laughed so hard that she almost ate the rice porridge up her nose, and then she was knocked on the forehead by her grandma before she calmed down. Let's not talk about how Li Laozi was in dire straits. I just want to say that when Mr. Wen and others arrived in Luoan, school was about to end. He handed over the post and was quickly welcomed in. Mr. Wen and Mr. Peng were classmates when they were teenagers. Although they were separated for many years, they came back this time and started to get along again. The two have had different experiences over the years, but their temperaments have not changed, so they still have a great rapport. Otherwise, Mr. Wen would not be able to safely send Jiren here, and Mr. Peng would be responsible for teaching him every day. When good friends meet, it is natural to have a few words of laughter. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 229. Chapter 229, Those who are near the water and the towers first come first. Mr. Peng looked at the cantaloupe basket and said with bright eyes, "You have a conscience and know that I have been craving this recently. Last time, Jiren sent me a cold melon. It was so sweet. It's a pity that this guy is too stingy. I never came to pay homage again. Mr. Wen only gave him 2 cantaloupes, just be content, outsiders can't eat them yet. I can only give you 2 to satisfy your craving this time. Next time I come over, I'll bring you more. This basket is it's for Dinjo, I have something to discuss with him. I'm telling you, you don't go to the 3 Treasures Hall for anything. What are you plotting against our academy this time? Which disciple are you going to bring in?" Mr. Peng called the boy to take down the cantaloupe, but Mr. Wen refused to sit down and drink tea. "This matter is urgent and cannot be delayed. Call Jiren and let's go to see the dean together." Mr. Peng was confused. "What's going on? Please don't cheat me." "Don't worry, it's a good thing. Otherwise, how could I let Jiren show his face?" "Yes, then you wait." Mr. Peng called someone to find Jiren in the school building, and then took Mr. Wen slowly to the dean's yard. As soon as the 2 of them arrived at the door, Jiren also arrived. "Sir, teacher," he bowed his head and saluted. Perhaps he was walking in a hurry, and his forehead was covered with a thin layer of sweat. Mr. Wen patted him on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry, I'll take you to see the dean. There's something good going on." "Yes," teacher Jiren was curious, but didn't ask any more questions. Soon, the 3 of them were sitting and drinking tea with the dean. Mr. Wen politely gave me the cantaloupe, and then got down to business. "I heard that the collection of books from Taiwa Academy will be sent for copying and will be kept in the academy for 1 year for students to read." Zhou Yuan was also surprised. Mr. Peng was even more happy, her old friend really didn't cheat her. He quickly took over the job of copying, and Jiren promised that he would copy well with his classmates. Of course the dean would not refuse, and the matter was settled in a few words, and Jiren also put his name in his mind. After all, a year later, the Li family moved these more than 400 manuscripts back, and even if he wanted to read them, he would ask Jiren to borrow them. The matter was settled smoothly, and the dean received the benefit and was generous. He gave Mr. Wen 2 cans of good tea and invited him to attend a poetry gathering a few days later. Mr. Wen readily agreed. After leaving the yard, Mr. Peng couldn't help but patted his friend on the shoulder, his face full of envy. "You are really lucky. This poetry club is full of celebrities. I am not even qualified to go and see it. I didn't expect that the dean actually invited you to join us." Mr. Wen was amused and said, "If you give him more than 400 books, he will also be willing to take you there." After saying that, he invited Mr. Peng to have dinner at Li's restaurant. Mr. Peng refused. Firstly, the collection of books had to be moved into his yard to prevent them from being lost. Secondly, he was also a book lover and wanted to swim in the sea of books immediately. How could he bother to eat? Soon, Jiren's classmates were all called out to work. They each carried a stack of books and walked in, feeling a little dazed. On the way, school was over just in time, and the students I met were even more curious. Mr. Peng, who had been staring at the collection of books until he entered his study room, breathed a sigh of relief. After that, he still had to label, sort and organize, go to the warehouse to pick up pens and ink, and arrange tables and chairs for students to copy. He was so busy that even Mr. Wen didn't have time to see him off when he left. Jiren led Mr. Wen to the restaurant. Li Lao-san was also happy to see Mr. Wen, Lu Baiatu, and others. Jia and Jiaxi was used to being a waiter, so it was not difficult for her to sell food. She immediately took over the shop and asked everyone to go to the back and talk slowly. Ji Yi and Lu Yang also helped, and they were extremely agile. In this way, Jia Huan had some free time and hurriedly cooked vegetables to prepare dinner for everyone. Jiren wanted to talk to his brothers, so he also crowded in the front shop. One of the well-informed students couldn't help but ask about the collection of books. Jiren smiled and said, "I've been here in the academy, so I don't know much about it." This can be regarded as an indirect admission. Their family sent more than 400 books. The students were all envious, but mostly happy. Who doesn't want to read more books and gain a lot of insights? Some people wanted to express their gratitude to their fellow family members, while others wanted to join the team of copying books and get a sneak peek. Jiren responded with a smile, neither humble nor overbearing, and he was at ease. Ji Yi and the others looked at him, admiring his elder brother's patience and tact. By the time the food in the shop was sold out, the door was closed, and the banquet in the backyard was ready. Jia Huan has been working alone for so long, and his craftsmanship has gotten better and better. There were 8 dishes on a table, all common home-cooked dishes, but full of flavor and flavor. Paired with a pot of wine, everyone was eating and drinking while talking, and they were in great spirits. A few boys finished eating early and asked Jiren to take them out for a walk. At this moment, the shopping street is also the busiest time of the day, with everything being sold on the street. Jiren took his pocket money and bought snacks for Jia and Jiaxi, and also bought a gadget for his sister, and asked his brother to help take it back. As Ji Yi and Lu Yang grew up, they were reluctant to ask their brother to spend money, just to watch the fun. More often, they asked how the academy was doing and whether their brother was being bullied. Jiren felt very warm and asked them if they had experienced any hardships in the mountains. For a while, the brothers walked and talked, getting close and lively. That night, everyone slept in the backyard of the shop. In summer, there was no need to cover them with quilts, which was not a problem. A clean big Kong would be enough. Early on the next morning, Mr. Wen and Lu Baiatu returned with the boys. Jiren hurried back to the academy after breakfast last night because Mr. Peng made an exception and allowed him to stay out for once. As a result, the shop returned to its usual quiet state. But at noon, Go Shenger came to ask for help. It turned out that Jiaran and more than 30 classmates were obsessed with copying books and had no time to come out to eat. From now on, I'm afraid lunch and dinner will have to be delivered from the restaurant. Jia Huan agreed immediately without saying a word. Hence, he prepared meals early every time and took the dog leftovers in and out. There are no secrets in the academy. The concierge has long known that the Li family has brought great benefits to the academy, so the family enjoys coming in and out. The concierge not only does not stop them, but is also very polite. Jia Huan occasionally brought 2 meat buns to the concierge, and gradually he became more familiar with them. As for Broken Gold Beach, food and wages were divided again last night. This is the second time, and there will be countless times in the future. The villagers are much calmer. Those who should carry food, and those who should take money take money. Because the Li family lacked the third son to earn work points, Li and the fourth son also wasted a month in the mountains with their family righteousness. This time, the Li family will inevitably lose a lot of money for the division of labor. The old lady didn't think anything of it. She took the wages with a smile and took the other women to divide the fine cloth Mr. Ye bought. In this way, the women can make clothes for the elderly and children when they have nothing to do. Seeing this, the villagers engraved the 4 words more work, more reward in their hearts. Even in the Li family, there are fewer people working, and they still receive less wages. They are not favored. The village is really a bowl of water. Jiyan is a money addict. She spent a long time counting money with her grandma at night, and it was rare for her to be too lazy to get into bed in the morning. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Mrs. Kui came to sit for a while. When she saw that Jiyan was wearing a red longevity belly band and sleeping with his hands and feet spread out, she smiled and sat with Mrs. Li under the eaves of the corridor, cutting cloth. Why did Fu Niu sleep in today? This girl was drooling while holding the money last night and refused to let go. She went to bed late. Maybe she was still dreaming about getting rich at the moment. She couldn't wake up no matter how hard she screamed. Mrs. Li looked out the window and smiled. A doting look on his face. At this moment, Jian ran in from outside and shouted, "Grandma, something happened over there in the valley." "What happened? When did you come back?" Mrs. Li stood up in shock and asked. Jian anxiously grabbed his grandma and said, "We just got home." "Grandma, please go quickly, there's going to be a fight." Mrs. Li was worried about her granddaughter and wanted to enter the house. Mrs. Kui said, "Auntie, go take a look first. I will come with Fu Niu on my back." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 230. Chapter 230 Uninvited Guest. Old Mrs. Li left first. Mrs. Kui was not worried if she was left behind, so she hurried into the house to find good news. Jiyan rubbed her eyes. She had just been woken up and was still a little confused. Mrs. Kui helped her get dressed quickly and whispered, "Who is it? They are living a good life, so why are they here to cause trouble? Senior brother Wen is not here, and neither is the Marquis. If there is something really bad, what if the village suffers a loss?" She didn't expect a little girl to understand the good news, but she did. Someone is making trouble. Her sleepy head had disappeared at that time, and she lay directly on Mrs. Kui's back, urging, "Sister, hurry up." Mrs. Kui gave her a hand and rushed to the entrance of the valley. At this time, there were 100 or so people gathered at the entrance of the valley, not only the young and old in the village, but also guests from the valley and young drivers. Surrounded in the middle are more than 20 women, each wearing a thin gauze skirt, hairpins with flowers, eyebrows painted, and dressed up enchantingly and beautifully. Especially the one in the middle, who is wearing a long aqua dress, a flower bun, and a jade hairpin. There are also small pearls hidden in the bun, together with the pearl necklace around her neck and the bead strings on her wrists. Echo. It makes her look more gentle and elegant, like a fairy falling into the mortal world. People dare not blaspheme, but they can't help but want to get closer. Needless to say, this is Hawaruyu and her Phaeacian song and dance troupe. The village chief and Mrs. Lee stood opposite the women, and the rest of the villagers stood behind. Especially the men in the village were dragged around by the women and did not dare to say a word. Even if they even looked up twice, the women would glare at them. But the male guests in the valley were very interested, and their eyes lingered on the white necks of these women. The village chief and Mrs. Lee saw this and became even more disgusted with the women in front of them. The village chief said directly, "You said that you are the Marquis's guests and were invited by the Marquis to stay here for a while. Do you have any letters or tokens from the Marquis?" The women all frowned and complained softly, "The Marquis is in a hurry to go to war. He only asked us to come over and wait for him to come back to explain in detail. How can I have time to write letters and give tokens? Yes, we are not bandits. Are you still afraid that we will kill people and set fire to the village? It's just that the Marquis couldn't bear that we just arrived in Jiangnan and had nowhere to stay, so he invited us to stay for a while. There are also women who speak rudely, 'You are just slaves, why do you still question the master's decision? You have to block the guests invited by the master.'" The village chief's face turned dark when he heard this, but Mrs. Lee spoke up, "We just came back from the dock. At that time, the Marquis went on an expedition, and it was impossible to see you again. Even if I saw you, I invited you, so there is no token. There should be some personal escorts for the letter, right? There are no personal soldiers, and it's impossible to live in the Marquis's house just by talking about it." Yes, the village chief also came to his senses. What if you lured a wolf into the house and you plotted against the Marquis? How should we explain to the Marquis? The women stamped their feet angrily, as if helpless and aggrieved. Why can't you explain it? Can we still lie? It's a pity that no matter whether they act coquettishly or threaten them, the villagers just won't give way. Hawaruyu frowned and clenched the veil in her hand. Since she couldn't find an opportunity to get acquainted with Xintinghao at the pier, she decided to take a shortcut and found the hot spring resort in Xintinghao. As long as she lives in Xintinghao's courtyard as a friend, let people publicize it more in Xindu. When Marquis Xinting came back, he couldn't explain it clearly. When the time comes, she will use some means to keep him under her pomegranate skirt, and they will have a place to stay in Jiangnan. At that time, she will become the woman of Xinting Marquis. If she can give birth to a child, her status will be more stable. The sisters in the group designed a new dance in the hot spring valley, and occasionally had a fairy bath. Countless men came swarming with money in their hands. In this way, she has a man to protect her, children by her side, and a cornucopia of money to continuously earn gold and silver. She no longer has to run around or do those dirty things. She planned it very well, and when she arrived at Broken Gold Beach, she was extremely satisfied. But I didn't expect that the group of mud-legged people in front of me were so unreasonable and difficult to deceive. She endured the anxiety and dissatisfaction in her heart, and still smiled gently on her face. The villagers bowed gracefully and said, "Dear fellow villagers, the Marquis went on an expedition and didn't have time to make more arrangements. We arrived suddenly, so we can't avoid these misunderstandings. It's all our fault for causing trouble to the fellow villagers, so please don't mind. It's not surprising that there are many people in Lily." Her appearance really made the villagers lower their guard. Even the village chief waved his hands and said, "You don't have to do this. Take your people and leave quickly. You can come back when the Marquis comes back." Hawaruyu bit her lip, as if she was embarrassed. "Uncle, we just came from Jiangbei and don't have any relatives or friends here. Thanks to the kindness of Lord Marquis, we came here. If we leave, we really have nowhere to go. A group of us women, in such troubled times, if something goes wrong, I'm afraid you will die." "Well, I have a compromise, uncle, what do you think? She directly stated her plan without waiting for the village chief to speak. We are the Phoenician song and dance troupe, and I am the leader Huaruyu. What we are good at is singing and dancing. I saw that the hot spring valley in the village is welcoming guests, and there are so many wooden houses in the courtyard. Can the village chief allocate a temporary residence for us? We are willing to stay every day. Arrange songs and dances to entertain the guests and add a bit of excitement to the valley, okay. Okay. Watching the singing and dancing while soaking in the hot springs, it makes me happy just thinking about it, a male guest in the valley echoed loudly. Huaruya quickly turned around and saluted this person, smiling with a grateful and shy face. Thank you for your appreciation from this distinguished guest. Our Phoenician song and dance troupe was only famous in the north before. Now we have just entered the south of the Yangtze River, and we will rely on your support in the future. Easy to say, easy to say. The guest had to respond, causing the other male guests to also support him. Everything is good in the hot spring valley, but it's boring. There will be more song and dance groups in the future, but I won't be afraid of loneliness. Yeah, haha, I'll have to come 2 more times in the future. Huaruyu and the girls from the song and dance troupe may have been used to such teasing and didn't think anything of it, but the village chief, Mrs. Li and others had dark faces. No, Li Lauer was also annoyed. He took a few steps forward and with a sullen expression interrupted Huaruyu and others flirting with the male guests in the valley. He said loudly, in our valley, there are not only male customers, but also many female customers. The customers come here just to soak in the hot springs and enjoy the beautiful scenery and delicious food in the valley. For the time being, we do not want to change our business methods, nor do we want to let the singing and dancing troupe enter. Of course, if the distinguished guests want to watch singing and dancing, we will refund the tickets immediately, and the distinguished guests can go back to the city and visit Flower Street. Li Lauer has a smooth temper. He speaks so bluntly and unpleasantly now, which shows that he is very angry. End of this chapter.